Let me ask you guys something real quick. Have you ever spent time with somebody and after leaving, you just felt completely drained? Not tired from doing something physical, but mental exhaustion. Like your energy just got completely pulled out of you. Well, what most people don't realize is that feeling is not random. It's a signal because the people around you are either giving you energy or they're quietly taking it from you. And over time, that has a much bigger impact on your life than you think. So, today, on a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast, I want to talk about the hidden cost of negative people and how they can affect your energy, your standards, your decisions, and ultimately your income and your growth. If you guys haven't noticed yet, my co host Ben will be with us again next week. He's out this time, but I just want to kind of hop on and just give you guys a quick, just really, I think, valuable episode just to talk through some of these things that have been on my mind recently. And maybe they've been on yours too. And if so, hopefully this episode will help. So, it's going to jump right into part one, which I call the energy drain. So we're going to start with the most obvious one here, which is energy. Negative people, they don't just say negative things, they create negative environments. And the tricky part is you don't always notice this right away. It shows up in oftentimes kind of small ways, like complaining, maybe focusing on problems all the time, pointing out maybe what won't work instead of what will, always being a pessimist instead of an optimist. And if you're around that consistently, it definitely wears on you because instead of feeling motivated, you start feeling hesitant. Instead of taking action, maybe you start second guessing yourself. And I don't know, over time, that energy drain just really can slow you down. And that's not because you're not capable, it's because your environment is just pulling you in the wrong direction. So that takes us to what I like to call part two, or lowering your standards. And the second cost is, I think, oftentimes even more dangerous because it lowers your standards, because what you're around becomes what you consider normal. If the people around you, cut corners, maybe make excuses, avoid responsibility, maybe settle for less than what they deserve, that slowly also then becomes your baseline. Not intentionally, but just naturally. You start to think, well, this is just kind of how it is. But when you get around people who operate at a higher level, who take ownership, who follow through, who expect more out of themselves, then you start to realize how much your standards may have actually dropped without even noticing it. So that really is a big shift. And that shift can completely change your results. And I think in a way that's also important because that's how your decision making starts to get affected. And that's what the third cost is. And this is how it really impacts your decisions completely because the people around you are influencing also how you think. If you're constantly hearing things like, that's risky, that's not a good time right now. I'm in real estate, obviously. Hopefully, some of you guys maybe are also connected with me because of that. You're starting just to hear all the time, it's a horrible time to buy a house. It's not the right time to sell. You're starting to hear all of these types of thoughts. Well, that's not the whole story. And there's, a path for everybody that's moving in the right direction. So when you start to hesitate, even when something maybe does make sense, even when the opportunity is there, you talk yourself out of it. You wait, you delay, you overthink. And in real estate, in business, in life, indecision is expensive. Let me say that one more time so it really hits. Indecision is expensive. Opportunities, they don't wait around forever. So if your environment is pushing you towards fear instead of action, I look at that as a cost. And most people just really never connect the dots there. So let's just kind of zoom out here for a second now and talk about the long-term cost of all of this, income as well as your growth. I think this is where it really starts to matter over time. That's the key part here, guys, is over time, that long-term cost. The people around you, they're going to influence your income, your growth, your trajectory, because your environment shapes, what you believe is possible, what you think you deserve, what actions you're willing to take. If everyone around you is playing small, it's very hard to play big. If everyone around you is comfortable, it's very hard to push yourself. But when you're around people who are actually growing, building, taking action, it raises your level as well. And that's when things start to actually change, not overnight, but consistently. So, with all that being said, what do we do about it? How do we actually, take action? What do we actually do with all of this? Well, this isn't about cutting people out of your life overnight. That's very important to understand. It's really, I think, more about awareness at first and intentionality. Start paying attention to how people affect you. Do you feel better after spending time with them, or do you maybe feel like they're really helping push you forward, or are they holding you in place, or even maybe holding you back? And then start making those small adjustments. Spend more time with people who elevate you. Limit exposure to constant negativity. Fill the gap with podcasts, books, content that push you guys forward because your environment is always going to be shaping you, whether you choose it or not. So you might as well choose it intentionally. We've done a few other episodes in the past about kind of similar topics. One of these is one of the best, I think, just self growth kind of people in the entire industry. Has been around forever. Is Jim Rohn? He's actually kind of the guy that Tony Robbins got all of his insight and just his kickstart to the man that he became. A lot of that was from Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn talks a lot about just the five people that you're around the most, and you're going to end up being very similar to that group of people. So kind of take that and apply that as well when we're going through this. Another episode that we've also done recently is about the reticular activating system, the RAS. And this is just really relevant here because it talks about with the RAS, a part of your brain that basically starts to recognize specific things. And those specific things, very, very much so, could be either positive or negative. So an example of this, just kind of at a very generic level, is let's just say that you have a red Jeep Wrangler, or maybe that's the car that you're kind of dreaming to get someday. Well, good luck. More likely than not, as a better way to put it, when you start driving around, you're going to start to notice every single red Jeep Wrangler driving around. And that's that reticular activating system, basically just being trained to acknowledge, sometimes not even intentionally, subliminally at times even, but you're going to start to notice those things, that red Jeep as an example. But this can also be applied to both optimistic as well as pessimistic thoughts. So the more that you're feeding yourself and your brain with optimism and productivity and just a more positive mindset, over time, if you're doing this consistently, you're going to start having that reticular activating system focusing on the right stuff. So if you guys want to kind of dive deeper into the reticular activating system specifically, definitely check out that episode. If you guys search it in YouTube or on the podcast, you guys can find it. And I'll also put a little note in the podcast show notes so you guys can access it there too. But just kind of close this one out. I know this one was quick, but I wanted just to kind of end it with this. If there's one thing that you can take away from all of this, is that people around you matter more than you think. They're shaping your energy, your standards, and kind of in a bigger picture, your future. So just choose wisely. That is the biggest point here more than anything else. If you're really wanting to get better, find other people that are like-minded, surround yourself with them as much as you can. If you don't have those people in your life yet, there's so many opportunities with social media these days, with connecting even virtually with other people. And if you even don't have the ability to do that, then just start with books, content, YouTube, just any way that you can fill your brain with positive and more optimistic type thoughts. That's going to help that reticular activating system. And more importantly, that's just going to help your overall well-being and put yourself in a position to be on the right path to have 2026 continue to be a great year for you guys. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you check out all of our others. We release new ones every single Friday. And if real estate is part of your journey, buying, selling, or investing here in the Denver market, don't forget every single month we do live, free Denver homebuyer webinars. It's really a masterclass, and we really dive a lot deeper than just something generic that maybe you're seeing others doing online. This is something that we really take seriously. We share some of the biggest mistakes that we see other homebuyers making right now in today's market, as well as sharing some strategies that we're currently using with our actual clients to find success and still win in a market that has tended to be quite challenging for most people. And yes, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel, but it might not be quite as soon as we think. So I think this is a great way to really just position yourself in the best way possible on these free Denver Homebuyer webinars. If you guys want to join and want to get a ticket to the next one, just go to denverwebinar.com and grab a free ticket there. But with all that being said, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you guys next week on a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. We'll see you then. Bye.